Story 1. Does anyone actually believe in cryptids? Because after one night in rural Montana, I don't just believe, I know. It started with a favor for a friend. He'd lost his phone a few days earlier on some back roads. Said he dropped it after stumbling out of his truck. When he called me, he sounded a little drunk, and I'd had a couple of beers myself, but I was still steady enough to help. Those roads are the kind where you can drive for miles without seeing any other cars. Just endless fields, barbed-wired fences, and the occasional flicker of something moving in the brush. We retraced his route for about 30 miles before turning back towards town. The sun had dipped behind the mountains, painting the sky a deep violet. It was the quiet hour between dusk and nightfall when the air feels heavy, like the world's holding on to its breath. I was still half-heartedly scanning the roadside ditches for a phone screen glinting in the fading light. Every so often I'd stop, thinking I spotted something, only for it to be a crushed can or a piece of glass. Then, maybe 15 miles from town, I saw it. Something stepped onto the road about 40 yards ahead, right in the glow of my high beams. At first I thought an elk, common around here, but the thing didn't move like one. Its gait was too deliberate, too heavy. Then I thought maybe a moose, though they're rare in our part of the state. But even that didn't fit it. Then bear crossed my mind. The movement was almost right, but it was too big. Even a grizzly bear wouldn't fill the road the way this thing did. And then it did something that made my stomach drop. Halfway across the road, it straightened up, stood on two legs effortlessly, like it had done it 1,000 times before. It wasn't clumsy or awkward the way bears are sometimes when they stand. It was smooth, controlled, and human-like. I slowed the truck to a crawl, both of us staring at it as it walked down into the ditch, then climbed up the far side. Without even pausing, it stepped right over a 5-foot fence, like it was nothing. That's when it turned its head towards us. The headlights caught its face for just a moment, and what I saw will never leave me. It had the head of a wolf, long snout, pointed ears, but easily 2 or 3 times the size. Its arms were too long for a bear's, and I swear I saw fingers ending in curved claws. The fur wasn't thick all over, more like patches where you could see the muscle beneath. It looked aware, curious even. And then it was gone, melting into the darkness beyond the fence as if the night swallowed it whole. My friend turned to me, eyes wide. "You saw that, right?" I nodded. His description matched mine, almost perfectly, and then he said it half jokingly, but we both knew he meant it. A werewolf. After that night, I started digging around, found out people all over the world have reported similar sightings, especially in the US. The earliest recording one, from what I've read, was in Minnesota. They called it the Dogman. I'm convinced that's what we saw. It didn't feel evil or threatening, just something ancient, wild, and impossibly real. Like we'd stumbled across a secret the world isn't meant to see. I know not everyone will believe me. Honestly, if I hadn't been there, I probably wouldn't either. But the night changed how I see the dark corners of this world. Sometimes the stories aren't just stories. Story 2. This is my encounter in 2006. I don't tell this story often. In fact, I've only shared it a handful of times in my entire life. But it stayed with me ever since that summer night in 2006, like a memory I can't shake, no matter how much I try. I grew up in central Kentucky, surrounded by open fields, winding roads, and old barns that looked like they'd been there since the dawn of time. That evening, I was exploring one of those farms, a massive stretch of land right next to the property where I grew up. It was something I did often as a kid, but this time it was different. The air was heavy with the smell of summer, grass, earth, and tobacco leaves drying in the distance. I must have wandered farther than I realized, because before long, the sun had vanished, leaving behind the kind of deep twilight where the world turns silver under a bright full moon. I remember standing between two weathered tobacco barns, the moonlight casting long shadows across the gravel road that ran through the property towards the highway. Everything was quiet except for the crickets and the soft hum of night. Then, out of nowhere, I heard something move. It started as a quick rustle to my right, just enough to make me turn my head, and then something large bolted right past me. It was nothing more than a blur of motion and sound. The air almost seemed to split as it tore through, and by the time my eyes caught up, it had disappeared behind the corner of the barn ahead. At first, I thought it might have been a cow. There were plenty around that area, but whatever this was, it moved differently, faster, smoother, and taller. My pulse quickened, but curiosity won out. I took a few careful steps towards the barn, squinting into the dim light, trying to catch another glimpse. That's when it stepped out. From behind the barn, a shape emerged, not crawling, not hunched, but walking, upright. I froze. It was about 6.5 feet tall, maybe taller. Its body was covered in short gray fur that shimmered lightly in the moonlight, and it had unmistakable outline of a long snout and pointed ears. For a split second, I told myself it had to be a trick of light, but then it looked right at me. Those eyes. They weren't animal eyes, not like anything I'd ever seen. They were sharp, intelligent, and fixed on me with an expression that was almost judging. The look wasn't wild or feral. It was deliberate, calculating, like it was deciding something about me. The creature stood there, silent and unmoving. I couldn't even hear its breathing. It had one arm braced against the barn, as though it had paused mid-step. Its other hand, yes, hand, hung by its side, long and oddly human, but ending in dark claws that caught the light. It was maybe 10 feet away, 10 feet from something that shouldn't exist. Its fur was gray, but not uniform, dark around the eyes and mouth, almost like markings. Its nose was black and wet looking like a canine's, and behind it I could see the faint curve of a tail shifting slightly. For 5 eternal seconds, we just stared at each other. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The air between us felt thick, charged, and almost humming. Then instinct took over. I ran. I didn't even look back. I just ran as hard as I could down that gravel road until my lungs burned and my legs felt like they might give out. I don't remember stopping for at least half a mile. Even when I finally slowed down, my ears were ringing and my heart was pounding so hard it hurt. I never went back to the farm after dark again. For years I didn't tell anyone, not because I didn't want to, but because I knew how it would sound. People laugh at things like this, but every detail of that night is burned into my memory. How fast it moved, and how it looked right at me, and how close it passed before disappearing. And the question that still keeps me up sometimes isn't what it was. I know what I saw. It's why it was there, why it ran so close to me and it didn't hurt me. That night changed me. I went looking for an adventure and instead stumbled into something ancient. Something that walks between our world and another. Call it what you want. A werewolf, a beast, a legend, but I know the truth. I met the Dogman the summer night in 2006, and I will never forget those eyes. Story 3. I used to think I'd seen everything these mountains could throw at me, but nothing prepared me for what I saw that night. I live in the northern edge of Pennsylvania, right where the forest starts turning wild again. Mile after mile of black pines, cold mist, and hills that swallow Sound whole. I grew up hunting out there, fishing, hiking, camping, never once scared of the woods, until one night in late October when everything changed. It started with the screaming. I was out at my cabin maybe 5 miles from the nearest paved road, doing some late night work on the generator. It was past midnight, the air was freezing, the kind of cold that makes every sound feel sharp. My dog, Juniper, a big mutt with more courage than sense, was pacing near the tree line, ears flat and tail stiff. She wasn't barking, which already told me something was wrong. Then it came, a sound so deep it rattled my chest. Not close, but not far either. A roar mixed with something human, like a person screaming through an animal's throat. It echoed across the valley, loud and guttural. Juniper backed up against the porch, whining. Then an answer. Another sound, high-pitched, rougher, more savage, like a wolf, but huge, guttural, and broken. The woods went dead silent. No wind, no crickets, and no owls. Just the hollow quiet that makes your heartbeat sound too loud. I grabbed my rifle, more out of instinct than logic, and stepped towards the edge of the trees. From where I stood, the moonlight barely reached past the first line of trunks. I could see maybe 30 feet in front of me before it turned pitch black. Something moved. At first, it looked like shadows shifting, but then I saw them. Two massive shapes about 50 yards out. One of them was stood upright, huge and broad, covered in dark hair that shimmered silver under the moon. The other was lower, faster, and lean, with long limbs and something like a tail whipping behind it. They were circling each other. I froze. I don't even know if I breathed. My brain couldn't process it. What I was seeing was impossible. The bigger one, Bigfoot I guess, let out a chest-deep rumble that I felt I heard before. The other one, Dogman or whatever it was, dropped to all fours, hackle raised, glowing yellow eyes locked on it. Then they clashed. The sound was unreal. Flesh, bones, snarls, and roars, all colliding like a storm tearing through the forest. Trees shook, branches cracked like gunshots, and I could see flashes of fur and muscle in the moonlight. Bigfoot was swinging those huge arms, and Dogman was lunging and snapping with its jaws. Juniper started barking, screaming really, and I yelled at her to shut up, but it was too late. Both of them stopped. For a moment, the entire forest held its breath, and then they turned, both heads snapping towards me. I could feel their eyes lock on me, even from the distance. My heart stopped. I lifted my rifle, but what was that going to do against either of those things? Dogman bolted first on all fours, fast, vanishing into the brush with a flash of movement and sound. Bigfoot stood there longer, breathing heavily, chest rising and falling like a bellows. I swear, it made eye contact with me. Its eyes weren't glowing or monstrous. They looked tired, angry, but intelligent. Then, without a sound, it turned and walked into the dark after the Dogman. I don't remember going inside. I just remember locking the door, grabbing Juniper and sitting on the floor with my rifle across my knees until dawn broke. Every few minutes I'd hear something in the woods, branches cracking, low growls that echoed too close for comfort. But they never came near the cabin again. When the sun finally came up, I stepped outside. The clearing was torn. Broken branches, claw marks on the trees, and something else. Blood. Dark, thick streaks of it leading into the woods. Part of me wanted to follow it. The other part, the smart part, knew better. For days after that, the woods stayed silent. No birds, no deer, nothing. Just like everything out there was waiting for something to end. It's been 3 years and I haven't gone back since. I still hear them sometimes, though. Late at night when the wind shifts just right, that low rumble followed by the guttural snarl. I think whatever I saw that night wasn't about territory. It was about survival. Something ancient, something that's been happening long before any of us came here. If you ever find yourself deep enough in the woods that the night goes completely silent, don't wait to find out why. Thank you for listening. This is the end of the video, and I hope you enjoyed. Hit subscribe and like for more content like this, and I will see you in the next one.